That's it.
The president of the committee hands out the draft of what the treaty might look like. Everybody's scrambling right now to figure out what's in it, what's not in it, what they like about it, what they don't like about it. Your take from what you've been able to get, I know you just got a chance to really get a look at it, not in depth, but what is your take on it?
Well, first of all, it was very long, and there's incredible potential in here for mischief. We've been through this a few times. We've got to go through it again. It's 12 pages. People thought it would be 5 pages. People were scrambling for it as it was handed out. It was literally still warm from the Xerox press, and each delegation only got 1 copy. So it was really quite a scene. But there's a lot in here. There's a lot in here that's got, again, great potential for mischief. We're very disappointed in certain parts of it, extremely disappointed in certain parts of it. They'll be arguing over this for the next 2, if not 3 days. And he's late getting this out.
Yeah.
He's late getting this out.
And you say you're disappointed in parts of it, and I want to make sure I touch on those parts. If I don't get to all of them, you let me know. But first of all, the UN has, as we expected, its laundry list of everything that's covered. Everything from battle tanks to small arms and light weapons. They, once again, don't define any of this. We don't know what a small arm and a light weapon is. But the indication is that civilian ownership is still very much included in this treaty.
Well, it's not just an indication, it's an absolute. Small arms and light weapons do include civilian arms. There's no doubt about that because there is no different definition in the treaty. And ever since the United Nations has been working on small arms and light weapons, that's their code word, that has included civilian arms. There's no doubt about that. So our biggest disappointment is that there is no exclusion of civilian small arms from the treaty per se. There's some reference to hunting and sport shooting and antiques in the preamble, but that is totally inadequate.
And again, we talked about this a couple of times, but Wayne LaPierre made clear anything in the preamble doesn't work because it's not enforceable, it doesn't have any clout at all. But also we're talking about civilian ownership being in the scope of the treaty.
Yes, it is, and there are other provisions which will have impact on civilian ownership, or could possibly have impact on civilian ownership. I believe there's a requirement of the treaty that you keep track of anything that you import or export. And that could be interpreted as requiring registration somewhere down the line. There's an awful lot of slippery language in here. And the most slipperiest part, and I think you were going to ask me about this, has to do with ammunition.
Right, and what it says in there, when it says it talks about each state regulating the export of munitions. It doesn't specifically mention the word ammunition. But is that what they're talking about?
That's exactly what they're talking about. Sometimes you
UN speak, right?
UN speak. Sometimes you think of munitions as being, explosive rounds for artillery, that type of thing. But in a broader, more accepted definition, munitions would include everything. Would include small arms munitions. Would include civilian munitions, as opposed to and including military munitions. So it's a very, very broad term. Now the paragraph you're referring to, and you only read a little part of the paragraph, is very, very complex. It's convoluted. It's what I like to say, something written by a Philadelphia lawyer. Now, for me, that means something very subtle and dangerous, and and watch for the details. Watch for the hidden tricks. And this paragraph on ammunition, I think it was put in there to somehow assuage the United States, which has been very opposed to the inclusion of ammunition in the treaty. But I don't think it really will satisfy the United States. Again, they speak for themselves. I do know from a source that there's an extremely high-level conference going to go on this afternoon about the U.S. position on ammunition. The United Kingdom is going to push the United States to have a broader definition of ammunition, to have ammunition more specifically included. There's a lot in this treaty, and it's going to be very interesting as we go through it line by line. What really frightens me is the fact that we just got this. This is like a piece of complex legislation in front of a legislature or Congress, and you're going to try to rush it through literally late at night. It'll probably be late at night before something's agreed to. And I don't know whether or not the United States is going to have the wherewithal to resist the temptation just to finally go along. I'm hoping that they will put their foot down on a lot of provisions. I'm hoping they'll put their foot down particularly on the fact that civilian arms are not exempted from this treaty. They are included in this treaty.
It's a scary thought when you think that you just said they might be convinced to sign this, the U.S.
Well, and another thing, if the United States signs this,
I mean, approve it and then
yeah,
give it to the president to
yeah,
sign.
give it to the president to
It still
sign,
has to
yeah.
go through the Senate, but let's say that happens.
Well, but then even though it goes through the Senate, if the United States has signed a treaty according to other international law, that means we'll try to abide by the treaty. That's just something we've not talked about a lot. But this is what happened with the Organization of American States Firearms Protocol Treaty. Clinton signed it, and then they basically went along with it. The Senate has never ratified it. Now, this is kind of a subtlety, but it's a very significant subtlety, and it's a dangerous subtlety, and it's something that we need to take very seriously. Not just ratification. I doubt whether or not this treaty will be ratified anytime in the near future. But whether or not a hostile administration would try to go along with it, that's another question. Also, whether or not some federal court might cite the treaty as reasons to perhaps go along with there. There was a series of lawsuits against arms manufacturers, which basically failed. But the government of Mexico has hired another law firm here in New York to sue the manufacturers on this theory of diversion of arms. This treaty could be cited in that suit by that law firm that's been hired here in New York. Now, that may be conspiracy stuff, that may be tin hat stuff, but it could be very, very serious. And you've got to look ahead.
Well, and John Bolton told us just on Friday when I was interviewing him, he said to me, I said to him, hey, you drew the line in the sand. Can we even think that this administration is going to come close to doing what you did? And he said, absolutely not, because that's not what this president wants to do as far as his international image alone.
That's right.
But there was also another part in this treaty, and it said, nothing in the treaty prevents states from exercising their right to adopt additional tougher measures. So is that the UN indirectly saying, hey, keep pushing for gun control?
I think it was, and I think it's a bit of a slap in the face of the NRA. One of our other updates, we talked about how Ecuador suggested a provision in a treaty allowing states to ban guns. I think that's a little bit of a giveaway to them. I see no need in this treaty for that statement. Again, it's a preamble statement, so it doesn't really count. But again, it's a bit of a slap.
But human rights still a big issue in the treaty.
It's a huge issue in the treaty, and we're very concerned about that because there are some human rights advocates out there, particularly a United Nations Special Rapporteur, there's a UN term, who did a report on small arms abuse and human rights. And this UN person, her name is Barbara Fry. She's a law professor at the University.
She's here.
Yes, she's here at the University of Minnesota. Wrote an extensive report for the Human Rights Commission, in which she said that human rights law requires gun control, and that's pretty well documented. So every time I see human rights law referred to in one of these treaties, I get a little uncomfortable because I know what's lurking way in the background. A lot of the people writing this treaty have no idea really what they're talking about when they refer to human rights law or international humanitarian law.
So just to make clear again, civilian ownership and ammunition still in this treaty as far as the draft goes.
Very much in this treaty.
So what happens in the next couple of days? They debate it, negotiate it. Come Friday, what's going to happen? You think?
They'll debate it. There'll be negotiations. Friday they'll have an up and down vote on the report of the conference, and this treaty will be attached to the report of the conference as an annex. From there, it goes to the General Assembly, more specifically, the first committee of the General Assembly in late October. We will be there following it, and then the first committee will have a debate on it, and then it will go to the General Assembly, and then it'll be sent out for signature.
But most importantly, do you think this is going to be approved by consensus? You said the U.S. is upset and concerned about a couple of things that are going on with the treaty, and they're having meetings right now. But do you think it's going to be approved as by consensus?
If you force me to bet, yes, I would have to say it's probably going to be approved. Now, what I'm really frightened of is that the United States came into this treaty, and again, I'm not going to second guess that delegation. They have listened to us, and we've talked to them. We have very good communication with that delegation. So I don't really want to second guess them. But the United States came into this whole negotiation saying that we wanted a treaty, and they have said in several times that they wouldn't break consensus. And in fact, there are several other countries, I've been told privately, that don't want this treaty, but still don't want to break consensus. Nobody wants to be the bad guy. So if nobody wants to be the bad guy, then it's just a matter of time before the treaty is accepted. All you have to do is, you don't have to negotiate, I just have to wait you out. If I know in the end you're going to agree to something, all I have to do is wait.
Well, as you said, we've said from the start, we have a president reversed U.S. policy, signed on to this treaty from the start, and if you're right, we're in trouble.
We'll see. We'll see.
All righty. Thanks, Tom.